another edition of Kyle versus KJ in the Ultimate Plan B. Today we're going to go ahead and do the same thing we do every week. We're going to take a look at what's going on in football, what's going on in fantasy, because you know they're two separate worlds nowadays. So first off, how we're going to kick this off, we're going to introduce our panelists, experts if you want to call them. First we have KJ. KJ, quick word for the fans.
Hi.
And that was KJ. Alright, that was a good one. He's a word of many words. And next we're going to introduce you to Kyle.
What's up, guys? I'm Kyle. I brought my fantasy football playoff goatee with me tonight. I hope it brings me some good luck.
I'm not sure if that qualifies as good luck since it's not really there. But I know what you mean. Alright. Alright, so let's kick this off with the first segment that we like to call Plan B versus Plan B, where we discussed our starts versus our sits. So first off, we're going to go ahead and start in the QB position for Week 7. So first off, we'll give the camera off to KJ. Who do you have in the QB realm that you could start this week?
All right, so this week you've got two quarterbacks on bye. Chances are Glennon's not your starting quarterback. So those Foles owners out there that are looking for a bye week replacement, I don't know if you remember, but I recommended Logan Thomas last week. That was before I found out Carson Palmer was starting. And a lot of people gave up on Palmer because he threw out his arm, whatever, hurt his shoulder early in the season. And now he's down to being owned in like less than 40% of leagues. They've got a nice matchup this week. And I think at least 2 touchdowns is his floor, I think. He could be going for 3 touchdowns this week and about 270 yards.
Well said, well said. I definitely paid attention to that Arizona game, and it definitely didn't look like Carson lost a step at all. I thought he was going to be a little bit slower or sluggish, getting rid of the ball because of the whole neck problem, but he's about the same. So, Kyle, who do you have starting for QBs this week?
My QB to start this week is going to be Cam Newton. I know that might be a name that is pretty obvious, but being a Cam Newton owner myself in one of my leagues, it's been a pretty tough year so far. You're not sure whether or not you should be starting him or sitting him because he hasn't been running the ball. But if you watched the game last week, he had over 100 yards rushing. The coaches are letting him start to move the ball with his legs, and I believe that that's going to be here to stay for the rest of the year. He's got 2 reliable targets in Olsen and Benjamin. And with all the running backs that are injured on the team, I think D'Angelo Williams is going to be out for a couple more weeks. He's going to get the red zone carries, and if he throws for 2 touchdowns, he's going to have another 1 rushing, and I think he'll have another big week this week.
I hear you, and hopefully the wide receiver core kind of makes up for it as well for Cam. And then since we're still on the same realm as sits and quarterbacks, I'm going to go ahead and side with Kyle. Who do you have sitting for quarterbacks?
This week I have sitting Ben Roethlisberger, not only because they're playing a defense in Houston that just has a ton of studs. I know J.J. Watt's got 3 touchdowns already on the year, which is just ridiculous. He's going to be chasing Ben around all day. I just don't believe in offensive coordinator Todd Haley. The offense has just looked horrific. I think they missed Bruce Arians there, and I have no faith in Ben Roethlisberger having a big game this week.
I hear you, and with the possibility of a certain person coming back, it's kind of 50-50 at the moment, so we'll see what happens with that. So he's going to have 2 people chasing him, just a side note. All right, so also on the QB side, who do we sitting on your bench, KJ?
So this is going to be kind of a weird one, but he's been a little bit inconsistent, and he's still missing his big target. He goes back to being a regular quarterback when Calvin Johnson's on the lineup. So I'm going to go with Matt Stafford, even though the New Orleans defense has been pretty putrid. I need to see it from, and I think there's some guys, maybe some backups that you drafted as a bye week replacement for Stafford, or some guys on the waiver wire, such as Carson Palmer, that I would start this week over Matt Stafford.
All right, I hear it. It's a little risk in there, but he has been only putting up numbers in the teens, so I understand the concern there. So while we're on KJ, why don't you go ahead and get into your start for running backs this week?
So I've got one starter for this week, one starter for next week. This week I've got Bernard Pierce. A lot of people drafted this guy in their drafts like third, fourth round because he was going to be starting for the Ravens until Ray Rice got back. Then he got hurt like he always does, but he still looks like the guy to use at the goal line. Last week Justin Forsett racked up the yardage like crazy, but Bernard Pierce poached his touchdown. So in a game against Atlanta, who, again, not a fan of their run defense, I'd probably be plugging in Bernard Pierce as a low-end RB2, maybe a flex guy.
Makes sense. It makes sense.
And my guy for next week that you guys can pick up on the waiver wires this week, but you're probably going to want to bench because he's going to be a tough matchup, is Jerick McKinnon from Minnesota. They're going against Buffalo. They've got one of the top run defenses in the league, so I'm not going to touch him this week. But next week he's got a really juicy matchup. So Jerick McKinnon, stash him on your bench if you can.
All right, nice little plug there. And we'll switch it over to Kyle. Who do you have starting for running backs?
At my running back position to start this week, I'm going to go with Shane Vereen from the Patriots. They just lost Stephen Ridley for the year, and Vereen is already a pretty decent running back in PPR leagues. Now he's just going to get more touches. They're going against the Jets. The Jets have a pretty strong D, but they seem to be breaking down at the end of every game because their defense is just on the field too much. Geno Smith doesn't give them any kind of rest. And I think that eventually you're going to see Vereen with about 5 catches out of the backfield and should see increased touches out of the running back position as well. So he should be able to get into the end zone and put up some big points in PPR leagues this week.
I hear you. And they got a tricky situation that they got to figure out there with the committee behind Vereen as well. So that's something to keep your eye on. So while we're on Kyle, who are you sitting on your bench for running backs this week?
This week, I'm going to sit a guy that if I owned this guy, I would be very frustrated with. His name is Alfred Morris. I just don't trust him at all, especially with how the Redskins have been playing. Every time that they're in a second and long or third and long, you see Roy Halou get thrown in the game. If they're ever down at all, they go completely away from the running game, and Alfred Morris is a complete non-factor. Even though they are playing in Tennessee, I just don't see him having a good game. I think that Roy Halou will be on the field for more snaps than Alfred Morris is, and I just would stay away from him this week.
That's a good point. That's a pretty good point because you never know who's going to be starting for quarterback for Washington as well, because I just heard that RG3 did get a full practice in today, so we'll see how well their passing game works out. So then we'll go ahead and switch it over to KJ. So you have starting in your wide receiver slot this week.
Can I say who I'm sitting in running backs first, though?
Oh, you can do that, too.
My sit this week is a guy that was drafted in the second round of most leagues, but I stayed away from like the plague. Zach Stacy. He's a guy you've had to start just out of loyalty because of where you drafted him, but he's not really playing up to expectation. B.J. Cunningham is poaching red zone carries from him, and they're going against Seattle, and I think Seattle not going against a top 10 quarterback, they're going to want to show that they're still elite, and I think they're just going to wreak havoc on the Rams this week.
That makes a good point. I definitely want to see what they'll probably give Trey Mason some touches as well, see what he has in store. It makes sense. All right, so while we're on KJ, we'll go ahead and follow up with what I said before, and we'll just start for wide receiver.
So my start for wide receiver, I'm going with Brandon LaFell. He's owned in less than 20% of leagues, which is ridiculous because he's a top 20 wide receiver right now. He looks like Brady's go-to target. He's been getting in the red zone a lot, getting touchdowns and whatnot. So Brandon LaFell is somebody who I've been trying to pick up in as many leagues as possible.
I hear you. And he's definitely somebody you want right now to be Tom Brady's number one guy. So go ahead and switch it over to Kyle. So who do you have starting your wide receiver slot, Kyle?
I have another guy that will be coming in place for an injured player. It's Odell Beckham Jr. 2 weeks ago, he debuted. He caught he caught 4 passes for about 40 yards and a touchdown. They're going to have to find somebody to fill Victor Cruz's place. I also like Preston Parker. We'll talk a little bit more about him later, but I think that Odell Beckham Jr. is going to see a lot of snaps on the field this week. Eli's going to have to find some trust with him. I know that he actually did a couple camps with the Manning football camp, and he was one of the wide receivers from college that went there, so they've had a long past already, so they do have that trust factor already in place. And I think that Eli will look Odell Beckham Jr.'s way a lot this week.
Went to the same high school.
I would hope Odell Beckham and Eli can figure it out, because they haven't even given it a shot, to be honest. So, oh boy. So, all right, so we'll go ahead and swap it over to KJ for your sits in the wide receiver slot.
So my sit this week might be absolutely crazy to the Denver fan there. I'm going to sit, and this is a random one. It's just there's not a lot of guys to sit this week. I'm going to go out on a limb and say I'm going to sit Emmanuel Sanders this week against the Niners defense. So PPR leagues, yeah, you're probably still going to start him because he's going to get a bunch of carries or a bunch of catches, but I think the yardage isn't going to be there. I think they're going to close in on him pretty quick. He's going to go over if he's going over the middle. That's a tough linebacker core to go up against. And in a week where honestly I don't have many sit-worthy wide receivers, I'm just gonna throw Emmanuel Sanders out there.
All right, that's a risky one, if I have to say.
I know, right?
I mean, Austin Davis sort of did kind of rip up their the middle of their field, so I'm not sure what's gonna happen with that. All right, so we'll go ahead and switch over to Kyle. So who do you have sitting in your wide receiver bench?
I got a guy that is high risk, but and very high reward. But I don't like I don't like dealing with stuff like that. I'm gonna go with Deshaun Jackson from the Redskins. If you look at his stats, yes, last week he had over 100 yards, but he only had 3 catches. He has 2 games this year. He only has 1 catch. I don't like to have a guy that's going to be 1 to 3, 1 to 4 catches, and you might get a 60-yard touchdown out of him. You might not. I think that if I was going to start anyone from the Redskins, it would definitely be Pierre Garçon. I already told you to sit Alfred Morris. I'm telling you to sit Deshaun Jackson this week too. He got his big game last week. I think he's due for another dud this week.
All right, that makes sense. And as we were saying before, with their QBs kind of up and down, who knows what's going to happen between them. So while we're on Kyle, who do you have starting for tight ends?
You know, I really didn't even realize that I've been riding the Redskin train this segment, but I'm going to go with a guy that's coming back from injury. Jordan Reed is going to be back this week, which means if you have Niles Paul, you might as well drop him. He's not going to be doing too much for you anymore. Jordan Reed's going to be back. Last year when he was with RG3, he was tearing it up. RG3 was looking his way all the time. If RG3 happens to play, I think he's an even better play this week. And I just don't see him having a bad game at all. He should be targeted at least 10 times, and you'll see plenty of action for Jordan Reed this week.
All right, he sounds good, Kyle. I hear you on Jordan Reed. I definitely picked him up in a few leagues where people kind of slacked and dropped him. So we'll switch it over to KJ. Who do you have starting in your tight end slot?
Charles Clay is going to score points this week, I promise. I don't care who they play.
Continuing along to the fact that KJ needs to sit down with that comment. So again, mention your tight end to sit this week.
I'm sitting a guy who was a non-factor last week, and I think until he gets to 100%, he's going to be a non-factor this week. I'm going to go with Vernon Davis against Denver. Vernon Davis, the pass rush from Denver, I think is going to make Kaepernick run a lot. It's not going to leave a lot of room for them to throw the ball around. Yeah, I would be sitting Vernon Davis this week and starting Charles Clay instead of Vernon Davis.
To all Christian fans out there, I hope you got that part.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and switch it over to Kyle. So who do you have sitting?
I love Christians.
Oh, boy.
I have sitting this week Eric Ebron from the Detroit Lions. Actually, any tight end that you got from the Lions, whether it's Pettigrew or Ebron, I know Ebron's been getting a little more snaps on the field. He's getting more targets, but this is not the week that you want to be playing them. I know that they're going against the Saints. Their defense might have not looked that good to you, but the Saints defense are actually the #1 defense in the NFL against tight ends. So even though Ebron might be an up-and-coming young tight end, this week you want to stay away from him.
I hear you on that one, especially with the question marks surrounding Matthew Stafford, because he's not really had the huge game and the consistency we were waiting for. So keep the camera on. Kyle, let's hear your starting defensive and special teams.
I'm going to start the defense of the Cleveland Browns this week. They go against the Jacksonville Jaguars. If you can pick up the Browns right now, their schedule is very weak the next 3 weeks. They have very winnable games, starting with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't see Blake Bortles turning into any kind of Peyton Manning anytime soon. They compared him to Ben Roethlisberger. I haven't seen that yet either. I don't think they have the weapons that are good enough. They do get Marquise Lee back this week, but he's still down in the depth chart. They're not going to give him that many chances. And I think that Joe Hayden, as long as he stays healthy, should get a couple turnovers, and I think that the defense might score this week too. The rookie quarterback, Blake Bortles, is just going to be a little bit vulnerable to turning the ball over, and they will score.
All right, it makes a lot of sense, and their O-line is also falling apart, so I don't trust Jacksonville to really become a real threat. All right, so KJ, who do you have starting for your DST?
My starting DST this week is a team that put up a lot of points before their bye week, and then they got dropped when they did have their bye week against the Miami Dolphins. So, yeah, to clarify, they're not going against the Packers. They're going against the Chicago Bears. And the Chicago Bears offense just hasn't looked as potent as it was expected to be. Brandon Marshall's still not 100%. Alshon Jeffrey's getting his, but they haven't really faced a defense as tough as Miami's. Miami's defense has been really solid the last couple of years. They've just kind of struggled because of weak offensive play. I think this week Miami could be turning a couple turnovers for you this week.
All right, I hear you on that one. I hear you. As their offensive line definitely showed their way against the Pats last week. So, Kyle, who do you have sitting for your DSTs?
This is a pretty simple one. Whenever you have a defense that's going against the Denver Broncos, you usually don't want to even mess around with that. This week, the San Francisco 49ers are going against the Denver Broncos. They are beat up. They don't have all their starters. I know Patrick Willis might not even be playing this week. So I think you definitely stay away from starting the San Francisco defense this week.
Oh, yeah, I hear on that one. It's going to be a good game nonetheless. So that was our starts versus sits, Plan B versus Plan B. So we'll go ahead and move it on to our second segment that we'd like to call Trading Places. Our trading scenarios that we have going around the league and all the fantasy that are pretty popular. So the first trade scenario that I'll propose to Kyle, if you'd like to respond. The first trade scenario puts up Drew Brees and Larry Donnell for Le'Veon Bell. Which side of that trade would you want to be on right now, Kyle?
I think that the overreaction to Drew Brees not being off to that great of a start this year has been a little bit overblown. He still had a decent year, even though the Saints haven't been playing that well. I think that with them not playing well, that means they'll be down more in games, and I believe that means he'll be throwing the ball more. You'll see more touchdowns out of that. I know Le'Veon Bell's a top back, but I think the only way I make this trade, even though Larry Donnell hasn't been that great lately, so it is easy to give him up, is if you have a top backup quarterback, like if you have a Phillip Rivers on your bench, a Joe Flacco, someone along those lines, I think then you go for it. If not, I would stay put and keep Drew Brees. It really depends on what you have, though. If you have that good backup quarterback and you need the running back position, then I would definitely go for it.
I hear. That makes good sense to me, too. Can't really overreact to an elite quarterback like Drew Brees as well. So, KJ, which side of that trade would you like to be on? Drew Brees and Larry Donnell or Le'Veon Bell?
If I'm the Le'Veon Bell owner, I make that trade in probably 2 seconds. Yeah, upgrading to a quarterback like Brees is kind of, to kind of reiterate Kyle's point, Brees is going to get his, he's going to start picking it up. They're in a weak conference too, so you got to look forward to those other NFC South games they're going to be playing. And then Donnell, I know he's been down the last couple weeks, but if you just look at the history with Eli Manning and his tight ends, he loves throwing to him. And now that he's down, Victor Cruz, I think Donnell is definitely going to be a bigger part of the offense. So I would definitely take that side of the trade versus just Le'Veon Bell.
I hear you. That scale is definitely a little lopsided on my side as well. All right, so the next trade scenario we have is we're going to bring it to New York rivalry here. So this one is actually proposed to me by a friend of mine. So what are your thoughts on trading between Christopher Ivory and Rashard Jennings? KJ, take the floor.
Well, that's a tough one. I think I would probably stay pat. If I had Chris Ivory, I'd probably stay pat. I'm not looking to pick Rashard Jennings up back off of an MCL sprain, regardless of when he comes back. Yeah, Chris Ivory has kind of made Chris Johnson obsolete. Everybody thought Jets had a shiny new toy, and I see him on a lot of waiver wires. So Chris Ivory's definitely the guy to own in the Jets offense, and they're going to continue running regardless of how bad Geno Smith is throwing it.
Yeah, I hear you. Both sides definitely have some questionable QB play, so you can't argue which side of the trade you're going to be on. So, Kyle, which side of that trade are you going to be on, Ivory or Jennings?
I'm actually going to go ahead and disagree with KJ on this one. I know that right now Rashard Jennings is a little injury prone, but he's going to be back maybe 2-3 weeks, which means that when it comes down to the crunch time of the playoffs in fantasy football, he's going to be there for you. And when he was healthy, he was one of the top 5-6 running backs in fantasy football. Andre Williams has not impressed me at all in taking over the carries for Rashard, so I don't think you'll see him lose that many carries when he gets back. I think Rashard will be right back to his 20 to 25 touches a game. And with the way the Jets are playing right now, you don't have 20 to 25 guaranteed touches for Chris Ivory right now. He had a bad game last week, and I don't see him being as consistent as Rashard Jennings.
Yeah, there's definitely some consistency issues on both sides of that trade, so to be honest, we'll probably stay pat on either end, to be honest. All right, and that's our Trading Places segment. So now we'll go ahead and push it on to our third segment that we like to call Plan C. We like to call ourselves the ultimate Plan B. Now we're going to talk about Plan C's. And that's where we talk about and discuss sleeper picks for the week. So first off, we'll keep the camera on Kyle. So who do you have as your sleeper pick of the week in the QB slot?
All right, I know we've talked a lot about RG3 possibly playing. There's also been some noise of Colt McCoy taking over for Kirk Cousins. Somebody called for him to be starting this week. I think that Kirk Cousins might actually have a decent game here. If you look at his games fantasy-wise, he's been over 15 points in 3 out of his 4 starts. He had 1 bad start. He looked good against Seattle. He did score almost 20 points last week, even though it was an ugly game. This is fantasy we're talking here. We're not talking the real-life game. And I think that he'll get you around 18 to 22 points again this week against a weak Tennessee defense.
Very true, very true. And also to mention that game for the Redskins is at home as well, so that might be a little in his favor if you're looking for a QB sleeper. So we'll go ahead and push it on to KJ. Who do you have sleeping in your QB slot?
So this is a deep sleeper. I know Kyle hates my deep sleepers, Logan Thomas. But I'm going to go with Kyle Orton out in Buffalo. He's started 2 weeks so far, and he's got about over 40 fantasy points. He's got targets to throw to. I think this is a really good week to have Sammy Watkins. Yeah, I think it's a good matchup this week for Buffalo. So, yeah, Kyle Orton, deep sleeper, went up.
All right, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt on that one because you never know what's going to happen.
It's Minnesota. You can throw in Minnesota. Anybody can throw in Minnesota.
Very true, very true. So, sky's the limit. So we'll go ahead and keep the camera on KJ as well. And let's hear who's sleeping in your running back slot.
So my sleeper in the running back spot, I'm going to go ahead and say Niall Davis. I think that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to want to run the ball, keep the ball away from Phil Rivers, because we see what Phil Rivers has been able to do when San Diego just feels comfortable. So I think they're going to want to keep him off the field. Now Davis, I know a lot of people are kind of down on him because Jamal Charles is back, but I think he can still pick up 10 to 12 carries in that offense, maybe catch a ball or two out of the backfield. So if you're looking for just somebody to start, he hasn't played poorly when he gets the touches. So.
Very true indeed, because they're definitely going to creep Jamal Charles back into that starting role again. And that's the last person you want to rush back. So we'll go ahead and switch over to Kyle. Who do you have sleeping in your running back slot?
We actually mentioned this guy before. I'm going to go, he got his debut last week with the Rams. I'm going to go with Trey Mason. And I know they're going against the Seattle Seahawks, but if you watched that game against Dallas, DeMarco Murray went for 120 yards. And even Joseph Randle and the other running back from the Cowboys, all three of them ran wild over the Seattle Seahawks defense. So I think that Trey Mason is definitely the most talented running back on the St. Louis Rams depth chart. And I think that you'll see him get more and more carries over Zach Stacy and Benny Cunningham.
All right, that's a risky one, but a sleeper is a sleeper. And not for nothing, Austin Davis has been picking up his play, so you never know how far he's going to take the running back core with him. So we'll keep the camera on Kyle for a minute, and let's hear who you have sleeping in your wide receiver slot this week.
I mentioned him a little bit before as well. I said we'd talk about him later. My sleeper for the wide receiver spot is Preston Parker from the New York Giants. If you saw the first couple of games, even while Victor Cruz was on the field, he was getting plenty of touches. Eli does trust this guy. He does also return kicks. If you get return points, then he's definitely a guy to look at this week. He will get more targets thrown his way. He is a big receiver. He has a lot of speed. And I think that the Giants will go for a couple plays to get him in the open field and get him a couple touches this week.
All right, that's definitely what I call a deep sleeper. So let's hear what you got, KJ, in your wide receiver slot this week.
Well, being that I'm such a giving guy, I'm actually going to give you two sleepers, and I'll try to keep it quick. One of them, Justin Hunter. Kendall Wright has been disappointing this season outside of the 1 week where he blew up. Even as a PPR guy, he just hasn't been cutting it. And Washington is a team that has a really formidable run defense, so I don't think Sankey is going to blow up this game. I think they're going to be looking to throw it. I know Charlie Whitehurst is the quarterback. I get that. But still look for Justin Hunter as a deep threat to maybe pick up like 2-3 catches for a good chunk of yardage and get in the red zone. And then my other guy is
It's that deep of a sleeper. He doesn't even want to say it.
I don't even want to say it. Actually, it's Robert Woods from Buffalo. So Mike Williams has already called for a trade. He wants out on this team. So I think he assumed he was going to be the number one guy coming in here, and they drafted Sammy Watkins. And then Robert Woods, I loved him coming out of USC last year. I think he's just the more talented wideout. And again, it's another favorable matchup in terms of throwing against this team, Minnesota. I already said Kyle Orton was my sleeper, deep sleeper. So, yeah, Robert Woods.
All right, that's definitely a risky one. I did like him last year when he came out of the draft, so hopefully it works out for him, and especially with that questionable QB core as well. So we'll go ahead and switch it over to Kyle. Who do you have sleeping?
For my tight end position?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, first of all, I just want to comment real quick on a couple of KJ's sleepers since I really haven't gotten to argue at all yet. So we do realize that Charlie Whitehurst, a.k.a. Clipboard Jesus, is the quarterback for the Tennessee Titans. Justin Hunter is a deep threat. He can't even reach him. Please don't start him. Don't start him.
Yards after catch, man. Yards after catch.
Also, Kyle Orton, we're all on the Bills here. Everyone, just start your Bills this week. Kyle Orton's going to bring you to the promised land. But anyway, let's get back to the tight end position here.
Yes,
it's actually, he's not even the starter on the Patriots, but I'm going to go with Timothy Wright. He's been on the field more. He's now in Tom Brady's circle of trust. He was only on the field for about 25 snaps last week, but I think that even though he's got a limited number of snaps, he will get into the end zone again. He's scored in 2 straight games, and I think that Tom Brady will look his way in the red zone again.
That's definitely a sleeper tight end to watch out for. I definitely picked him up in 1 or 2 leagues this week. So KJ, who do you have in your tight end slot? Sleeping.
Sleeping. I could go the obvious pick, Dwayne Allen, because he's still not owning 100% of leagues, and tight ends are scoring every week on Indy's offense. But I'm going to go deeper. I'm going to go the team playing against the Colts, the Bengals. So I'm going to go with Jermaine Gresham. Every week, you're following your fantasy news. You're getting your updates game to game. There's always that one guy you're like, oh man, that guy got a touchdown. And yeah, I think Jermaine Gresham, with AJ Green still limited, probably being out again. They're going to be looking to throw because they're going to have to keep up with Indy. So yeah, look for Jermaine Gresham to pick up some Andy Dalton's throws.
That's a pretty good analysis, I would say, because they're definitely going to start keeping an eye on Mohamed Sanu because he was a huge threat last week as well. So I hear you on that. Share, Kyle, do you have a sleeper defense?
I didn't really have one, but if you want to, I would go with a team that's been giving up a lot of points, but the Chicago Bears. They're going against Ryan Tannehill this week. He's been a little shaky. He's very prone to throwing about 2 picks a game. Lamar Miller has also put the ball on the ground a couple times too. There's no Shamino, so they don't have that other back to hold on to the football. So I think that the Chicago Bears should be able to force a couple turnovers this week.
All right, that's
Chris, are we boring you? Why are you yawning?
You extend our segment and then you yawn.
It's terrible.
So KJ,
he's not going to make it so far.
In your DST slot.
The one that everybody poo-pooed on and kind of said they were going to be the worst defense in the league this year and set new records. Dallas against the Giants. Dallas still not owned in nearly enough leagues. Until they let me down, I'm probably going to ride them out with these favorable matchups. We saw Eli look very, very human. If you even want to call that human, he played terribly last week. Sure, there were a lot of drop passes, but still, I think Dallas is going to be looking to get after Eli, pressure him, and he's going to get a little case of fumbleitis maybe in the pocket once or twice.
I hear you on that one. You got to remember, that's a conference game, so Dallas is definitely going to dial it up just like Philly did as well. All right, so now we can finally push it on to our final segment, the viewer segment, where we let our viewers offer their pressing questions of the week.
There's so many fans. I appreciate the segment.
Seriously, we have thousands and thousands of questions just filing in. I could show you the list. They're all coming in so fast.
So many.
Join the movement, guys. Plan B all day.
My fax machine's going off the fritz right now back there. Fax machine. So Christopher Gordon, I believe you have a question for our analysts.
All right, so as Ro mentioned, there's been thousands and thousands and thousands of questions flowing in from all of our viewers, but I was able to pick 5, and here we go. So the first question for our analysts, would you start in the flex position Odell Beckham Jr. at Dallas or Travis Kelce at San Diego? Go.
All right, so I'll take this one. So Travis Kelce, when he's played, has been Alex Smith's #1 target. And unless KC commits to the run game, like I said they should earlier, definitely look for them to be chasing points. Travis Kelce's going to be the #1 target. Probably good for another touchdown this week. So, yeah, go Travis Kelce over Beckham. Beckham's against the Dallas Cowboys. I don't think he's ready to be that #1 guy yet. So.
All right, that's a good response, KJ. So let's hear your question number 2 from the social media outlets of Ultimate Plan B.
Oh, yes. So the second question is you pick 2, copyright 2 Panera Bread, but we have Steven Jackson at Baltimore, Darren McFadden versus Arizona, and Reggie Bush versus New Orleans. Pick 2. Go. Any one of you.
Kyle, this is yours.
All right, I'm sorry. Can you repeat the running backs again, please?
Steven Jackson, Darren McFadden, or Reggie Bush?
Pick 2.
Pick 2.
All right, I'm going to go with Steven Jackson, definitely, and Reggie Bush. I know that Reggie Bush is a little bit questionable going into this game, but PPR leagues, he's a beast. He's going to get a couple catches if he does play. especially if Calvin Johnson's not in the game. Steven Jackson has actually looked pretty good with Atlanta so far, even though their offensive line has been banged up. He has had a couple touchdowns the last couple of weeks, and I think that he has the best chance of getting into the end zone out of that group. And I think that Reggie Bush will be able to rack up a couple catches and be pretty decent this week as well, as long as he plays.
All right, that's a valuable option. We'll see how much they split it up between Joik if he's playing and Reggie if he's coming back. So, Chris.
All right, next question. So for Mr. KJ, we have Brandon Oliver going against KC's defense, Ahmad Bradshaw going against Cincy's defense, or Forsett going against Atlanta's defense. Pick one. Go. Unmute your mic.
This is a lot easier than the three that you just gave Kyle. Unfortunately, I only get to pick one. Of the three, I'm probably going to go Brandon Oliver, just because he hasn't let us down yet. He is the lead back. You pretty much know he's not necessarily going to be sharing carries with anybody. I know Donald Brown's going to be coming back soon, but I don't think he'll be back this week. So, yeah, I'd go Brandon Oliver with Forsett as a second-place guy.
All right, the valuable option. Next question.
All right, next question for Kyle from the people. We have Pierre Garcon versus Tennessee or Percy Harvin at St. Louis.
I'm going to go with Pierre Garcon on this, actually. I know that Percy Harvin is that deep threat that a lot of people think about, but when you watch Seattle games, they are only throwing him the ball 1 or 2 yards down, maybe on screens. You really don't see him going out on a fly route or anything like that. I think that Pierre Garcon is going to be targeted more. He's a bigger part of the passing game, and I think that you'll just see him put up bigger numbers this week than Percy Harvin.
All right, valuable option. I believe we have another question, Chris, from the people.
All right, last question from the people. This is a bonus question, actually. It's for the host. It's a comment and a question at the same time. So the comment is, stop being selfish and trade me Aaron Rodgers. And the question is, why haven't you done that yet?
The answer to that question is because that person has yet to offer me something worth Aaron Rodgers' name at the moment.
All right. Well, thank you for that answer. And everyone, please follow us on Twitter at The Ultimate Plan B. Actually, just at Ultimate Plan B. And be sure to use the hashtag KVK and hashtag UPB. Or find us on Facebook at The Ultimate Plan B. Ask your questions. We'll have them answered.
Go Bills.
Any last words, KJ? Unmute.
Yeah, no, the Bills are going to be awesome, Kyle, so if you could just stop, reserve that hate for next week after Robert Woods goes nuts and Kyle Orton has 3 touchdowns. So thank you.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that. Kyle, your rebuttal?
All I got to say is that my goatee here is getting pretty good, getting me to a point where I might be the next clipboard Jesus, so watch out, Charlie Whitehurst.
That's Ultimate Plan B, KVK, another one in the books. Go ahead.
Thanks for watching.